Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Gibson.
Thank you very much to Dr. Allen. I appreciate both of your presentations, and I'm the new kid on the block, and so I didn't have the benefit of knowing until afterwards the Senator Padilla's bill. I think it's well needed, and certainly I support it wholeheartedly. Can you elaborate on your comments, Dr. Allen, with respect to the 1 minute notification? For someone who's just gotten here, and for those who may be watching this for their edification as well, could we get more time than just a 1 minute? And then, what goes into that thought process? And it literally is 1 minute enough
Sure.
to notify thousands of people that an earthquake is happening and to prepare themselves.
Yeah, so, excuse me, the 1 minute, it's 1.5 minutes is a pretty hard limit. It's not going to get bigger than that in the state of California. It's actually bigger than that in the Pacific Northwest. And it's simply a question of how far you are from the earthquake. So as illustrated by this map for the Napa earthquake, the further you are away from the event, the more warning you get. In the really big events, like the 1906 event that Tom is talking about, where we rupture 400 miles of the fault, we can use systems like this to detect the earthquake as it begins at one end of the fault and then provide warning ahead of the shaking as this rupture is potentially coming down the San Andreas fault. And so that's how you get a minute. So the minute is a hard limit. It's the physics of the problem. So your second part of your questions is what can you do with that? You saw some images showing what you can do that in Doug Given's talk. I think of them in three categories. The first category is what am I personally going to do? And the answer to that is you move to a safe location in the room you're in. It's the same thing you would do if you feel shaking. The difference is you can now move underneath this sturdy table before the shaking starts rather than wondering what's going on before you do anything. So that's what you do as an individual. The second category is automated response. That's slowing and stopping trains. It takes 24 seconds to bring a BART train going at full speed, 70 miles an hour to a stop. And they do this because they want to prevent derailment. If you think about a BART train going along during rush hour, there's about 1,000 people on board going at 70 miles an hour. Preventing derailment of one of those trains is obviously a big deal. And then other automated response are things like chip manufacturing robots. This is one of the areas in Japan where they've seen some of the real cost benefit is putting these very sensitive, very expensive equipment into a hold mode so that they don't experience damaging during the shaking. You can do that in a fraction of a second and thereby significantly reduce the impacts of the earthquake. So I think that there's a very wide range of applications for earthquake early warning, and I think that because this is a new technology, people are still really starting to figure out what all of those applications are.
Thank you.
Sure.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Allen, you're definitely a leader in this field and have been for a long time, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to meet with you. What do you see as the role of academia in partnering with the state? And beyond funding, what do you think is needed for a successful earthquake early warning system?
So I think that when it comes to things like earthquake safety, history has shown us that because this is a public safety issue, as Tom was saying, the fact that these earthquakes only come around every few years, every few decades, it makes a special challenge. And that's why I think it becomes more important that academia is playing an active role in running these systems in partnership, obviously, with the various other agencies, whether it be federal or state agencies. But then the other piece, as was just being described, is this development effort. It's not a system that we want to go out and buy and install, problem solved. That would not be doing justice to the problem. We have the capabilities, we have methodologies to put something in place today. We've put a demonstration system in place today, as you've heard. But there's no question this system is going to be able to get better. And it only gets better as we can do more research into the physics of the earthquake problem. We understand the earthquake problem, and then we implement that new knowledge into these kinds of algorithms. So I think that that's the other key piece for the academic community, is to continue the push of development to improve these systems over the long term.
We've had some conversation in how the funding, state, federal, and other interacts and is coordinated. And my understanding is that, for example, Caltech received a substantial grant from the city of LA. And how is that coordinated then with OES. I'd like to better understand how the federal, state, and local efforts and funding works together and is coordinated.
Well, I think I expressed before that we have a group of people in Pasadena that is dedicated to running a seismic network in Southern California. And funding, especially in peacetime, is always a big issue. So we're willing to take funding for this network wherever it comes from. And sometimes it's most convenient if it comes through the U.S. Geological Survey. But I'll be honest, the U.S. Geological Survey funding has been very lean in these years. The U.S. Geological Survey's funding for the EarthQuake program is now 1/3 what it was 30 years ago, if you can, after you correct for inflation. We've been in a period of decreasing funding through the U.S. Geological Survey. In the last year or so, it's jumped up because of this special fund from the sequestration. But in the meantime, we've had things like the Northridge earthquake came along, and some money became available through FEMA after the Northridge earthquake, and we were able to build a broadband network with FEMA money. That's now long since gone. But then we got some help from the state of California through OES. Most recently, we got some money through FEMA again, through the city of Los Angeles, and that came to Caltech. It's actually money that was intended for general disasters. It was not earmarked from FEMA for early warning, but it was thought in the city of Los Angeles that earthquake early warning systems were appropriate for disaster planning. So that money was allocated over to Caltech. Caltech invested the money in the Southern California Seismic Network, and we're creative with trying to make things work however we can.
Well, I certainly understand your willingness to take funding wherever it might come from. I guess my concern, though, would be, are we operating on different tracks?
No. Let's be very clear about this. The groups that are plan together all the time. We work together all the time. It's how can we get these things collectively done. I often tell people, we build stone soup. I don't know whether you know this analogy of somebody has the pot and everybody else comes along and says, so what are you cooking? And, I'm making this delicious soup, and maybe you could put your potatoes in, and maybe you could put your carrots in. And we have played that game for many decades, saying to many different groups, we're trying to make a system for California, and we're looking for everybody to help participate in making this system. Okay, thank you. Mr. Linder?
Can I just sort of second what Tom is saying about the importance here of the partnership, that the various groups that are within the CISN for many years have been working very closely and very collaboratively, and that's why there is one system in the state of California delivering all of these products, despite the fact there are multiple sources of funding that may change from time to time.
My question, you had talked about some of the exciting technology that and what might be needed in like almost a perfect early warning system where you had mentioned specifically in an event where perhaps the seismic event was getting stronger, that you would be notified of a second wave that, hey, it's going to be a little bit larger than we had expected. And I don't know if this is the best question for you or for someone later down the line, but what's the best technology that's actually used and in place maybe elsewhere in the world, or what's out there that we know is a technology that we're capable of accomplishing now? What's the best and I guess the system that is the cream of the crop as we speak?
So we both have systems. So maybe I'm not sure. Richard maintains a system. Caltech maintains a system. We're both excellent. But let me just say in general that some of the most advanced technology on the planet is actually available through the research that's been done in the CISN system. The Japanese have by far the most advanced system in terms of deployment and operation of their system. They've deployed many high-quality instruments. They have a very disciplined and developed system they've been operating publicly now for 7 years or so. In California, our system is a demonstration system, but I can tell you in terms of the creative technology that goes into the system, our system has aspects that are even more advanced than the Japanese system, especially the way that we handle large earthquakes. I wish I had time to really go through that, but it's clear that what we're trying to do is on a second-by-second basis, as the earthquake plays out, we get new data about what's going on. You could almost think of it as when we watch the hurricanes play out over days, you watch data come in and scientists are pouring through the records trying to tell you what the hurricane's going to do next. Well, we don't have that in earthquakes. Everything happens within seconds, but we're trying to automate all that intelligent human common sense decision making and teach a computer how to make decisions on a second by second basis as the information comes in and the event plays out. So it's sort of like playing the hurricane at super high speed. And how do you make a computer make all those decisions for you? So some of the decisions have to do with duck and cover for people, but the real promise here is how to get the rest of our automated systems to respond correctly.
Mr. Mays.
I take a great interest in this topic. I live in Yucca Valley, grew up in Yucca Valley, which is very close to Landers, and there was the 92 Landers earthquake. And my community, my family, was greatly impacted by that. It wasn't just the earthquake itself, but it was also all the aftershocks that continued on for months after that. And so when listening to Mr. Gibson's question about can we expand this from seconds, go up to a minute, and even listening to Mr. Linder's question, for me, and I think that it's germane to the topic, I know we're talking about an early warning system, but are we getting better with the prediction? Predicting where it might happen, when it'll happen, the size of them. Have we gotten to the point? And I have to apologize. I studied political science, which some would argue is not a science at all. So I'd be fascinated to find out if we're getting closer to being able to predict.
So I think the first comment to make is that there's a very clear distinction between earthquake early warning and earthquake prediction. What we're actually tackling is a very different set of physics when we do earthquake early warning, because the earthquake is initiated. It's about detecting that initiation. Whereas when it comes to earthquake prediction, it's about saying when you think the earthquake is actually going to happen. So it's important to make sure we're all clear these are separate. My answer in terms of progress towards earthquake prediction is that we are not getting close to earthquake prediction by any stretch. I think most of my colleagues would agree that we're not going to be predicting earthquakes in the foreseeable future, and that's due to the sort of complicated cascading nature of the failure process that leads to earthquakes. So having said that, we can't predict earthquakes, which most people think of as meaning that we can say there's going to be an earthquake in a day or in a week or in a month. What we can do is forecast the earthquakes, and that's what you heard John Parrish and Doug Given talking about, and that's saying something about the likelihood of significant earthquakes over long periods of time, many decades. And so some people are often frustrated about that we can't be more precise, but I would sort of advocate that in fact that's a very important capability, because that's what leads to building buildings that are going to withstand earthquakes. Even if we had perfect earthquake prediction tomorrow, which is not going to happen, still we would have a large amount of damage, infrastructure would be destroyed, much as we saw after Hurricane Katrina, for example. By building infrastructure that can withstand earthquakes and reduce the impact of these earthquakes, then we're reducing the overall effects in the long term, and that is what earthquake forecasting does, and that's something that we have and is very much in place.
I'd like to add, too, though, that it's been a very long time since California's had a great earthquake in one of our cities. It's been since the 1906 earthquake. And we have some new technologies and we have some predictions, but we've built our entire infrastructure and we've never been able to really test it. So the next time we have the big earthquake, that will be the test. So imagine flying in an airplane that theoretically works, but it's never been tested. That's really where we are. And I hear some of my colleagues assure people that everything will go well. I can assure you not everything will go well in such a case. I mean, people will be really surprised to see some of our systems fail because we've never really been able to test them. We'll discover things that we hadn't thought of.
You know, we've heard from the federal government perspective. Certainly have given us the academic perspective and research perspective. We're going to hear from the private sector shortly. What comments would you have? Are we doing a good enough job of being inclusive of the private sector and advances in technology into our system, or are we going to find ourselves in a place where Twitter beats us to the punch?
So I think, first of all, there's no question, as I think you'll hear everybody say today, that this has to be a public-private partnership. And of course, you know, the challenge is sometimes that different people mean different things when they talk about a public-private partnership. We have many beta testers that are currently using Shake Alert, so that's been our effort within the CISN to engage with the private sector. And they're doing a variety of things, from providing data into the system to actually developing algorithms. We have one collaboration at Berkeley, which is trying to use cell phones to detect earthquakes. There's a similar effort going on at Caltech as well. So I think that we have a very engaged public-private partnership. And I think that under the leadership of Mark Ghilarducci, through the CalOES process, he is bringing everybody around the table to figure out what is the right role for all of these various groups, so that we can build the system that the state really deserves. So my answer to your question is yes, I think we are being very inclusive as a group under Director Ghilarducci's leadership, and so I look forward to seeing the outcome.
And could I just add that while it's not a perfect analogy, there's many similarities between what we're doing and what you see in the weather information sector. So there's universities working in the weather, there's the National Weather Service, and in addition, there are a plethora of private weather information services and weather forecast systems. And that wide range of public and private already exists in the weather system. And I think we all anticipate that similar kinds of divergence of products will come from the private sector through this effort.
Well, it's certainly encouraging. It strikes me it would be important that those private sector companies be engaged in the process in a way that we don't get farther down the line on some of those technologies than they're prepared
and I'd like to add
assist us with.
My company, Caltech, is a private company, by the way.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and thank you very much for the information you provided. I represent the 56th Assembly District, and that's Eastern Riverside County, Imperial County, known to shake things up a bit for two reasons. One, the San Andreas Fault and the Coachella Valley Music Art Festival. And both knock you off your feet. I wanted to just highlight, we do have in Imperial County and in the Coachella Valley through the Association of Government some pilot programs, a system in place. And I wanted to kind of get your perspective to see if you've been analyzing, examining, the efforts that are taking place in that area. I do know that we personally have seen some benefit in terms of the minute that we've been able to buy through this system, where the doors to the fire station, right, have opened up with the warning system, and making sure that, for example, in April 4th of 2012 in Imperial County, we had a 7.2 earthquake where fire engines were stuck in the firehouse because of the shaking that took place, and really took them 15, 20 minutes to respond to emergencies that were taking place as a result of the shaking. So I'm wondering to see if, through your research and analysis, are you looking at this region, and what are your thoughts, opinions, as that model is in place in Southern California, and the possibility of it kind of modeling the way for the state of California?
Well, are you referring to seismic warning systems? So there is a company that we'll hear from shortly, Seismic Warning Systems, that has installed a system in various places in California. The details of where the sensors are, what the nature of the sensors, how the sensors use information are not actually available to us in the CISN Shake Alert project. They're not part of the CISN Shake Alert project, and the information has not been made available to us. So it's very difficult for us to provide any assessment to you about its effectiveness.
Is there a specific reason? Is there something that we could be supportive of? I think we have an opportunity to look at a region that's consolidated its efforts through the educational institutions, the public safety agencies, and really seriously take a look at what's happening there to see if whether or not it merits additional attention.
So let me say that CISN is fully operational in Imperial, Riverside counties, and that the Shake Alert system is fully operational in the demonstration system in that region. But in terms of seismic warning systems, that's an independent system, and we're not actually aware of its capabilities.
I think, but in answer to your question, is there an area or a way in which you could be helpful here? I mean, I think everybody would agree that when it comes to such an important public safety issue as earthquakes, it's very important that there's a transparency, that there are standards, that there's enforcement of standards. And I know that this is an area that Cal OES has been thinking about very hard. It's important that we have that across the board for the state's earthquake early warning system. And so I think, support from the legislature of Cal OES as they develop those standards and that transparency will be very important so that the state of California knows what it's getting with its early warning system.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. With that, we would ask the role of the private sector panel to approach. Okay, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and begin with Scott Nebenzahl.
Let's see if we can switch to There you go, George.
All right, thank you. Excuse me, I've got a little allergy on my throat today. I don't mean to have my back to anybody whatsoever. Dear Chairman Gray and Hall, members of the committee, and all the distinguished guests that are out here. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Anyway, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is George Dixon, and I'm the founder and CEO of Seismic Warning Systems, the one you were just talking about, matter of fact. I've been involved in technology development and building businesses for over 35 years. Our company was the first company to commercialize and deploy reliable earthquake warning systems, and we are the world leader in earthquake warning applications today. We have the only system with a proven deployed track record and have had systems operating throughout California for over 13 years. In this time, customers have experienced 9 actual activations, which were earthquakes. Nothing but an earthquake has set this system off, and it's never experienced an activation that wasn't an earthquake. So there's never been a false positive in all those years. That's not to say there couldn't be. Any technology can have a glitch. We've just been blessed in those rare occasions where there was an earthquake that was a 5.0 or above Mercalli scale earthquake where our system was deployed. Our technology was specifically designed to deliver earthquake warnings and to permit people and systems to initiate automated actions prior to damaging shock waves. Our solutions detect and analyze seismic events in less than a second and initiate protective automated responses. The result is a proven and validated capability to prevent catastrophic loss and potentially saving lives throughout these earthquakes. This enables businesses, institutions, and individuals to protect assets, prevent injuries, protect against cleanup costs, and protect critical infrastructure and reduce business interruptions. This is a critically important aspect of a private-public partnership that deals with industry and business, because nobody's going to plug into a system that has false positives or what they call blind zones. Earthquake warning in California will enhance the state's resiliency to earthquakes. And the critical infrastructure, commercial businesses need to be enthusiastic adopters, no doubt about it. And for this to happen, earthquake warning must be, again, reliable, robust, secure, and fast enough that it can be used to control equipment, processes to prevent fires, spills, and other damage. The system should provide warning to everyone affected by earthquakes and must be designed to meet the most stringent applications and requirements. Finally, our contributions to the CEEWS working group process have focused on a few key elements, sharing both our years of dealing with end users and fulfilling the needs of state mitigation goods and goals and objectives. Director Gallarducci has stated these, as well as in the past, that these, including a earthquake early warning system for California, has to be reliable, robust, and effective. To not only have a public notification component, but a useful benefit that businesses can use that will protect our critical infrastructure, protect our economy, develop jobs, and hold California as the technology and export leader our private sector innovators can provide. I'm going to keep this as short as I can for you all today, because I understand that there was a long testimony, the last one. And we're going to do a few short slides. I want to say that the governor and Cal OES under the director Gallarducci have done a phenomenal job to pull everybody together here. But Cal OES has already funded with FEMA a regional earthquake warning system that's been reliable, effective, and they've funded it. And in the public-private partnership, seismic warning system was underneath. I think everybody in this room understands what seismic warning systems can do, its capabilities, and I've seen it for many, many years. The fact that the Napa earthquake, which was one of the most telling aspects of an earthquake warning system. Why? Because here's Napa and here's Vallejo. And right in the middle was approximately where that earthquake was emanating from. It was 11.5 kilometers deep. It was a very short period of time to react, respond, do something of value. An automated system needs to be point to point. If you start putting all kinds of people in situations in between them, you'll start having false positives, and you will ruin the opportunity that is sitting here in front of us that literally can train, educate, and deploy a system that will save lives in a proactive rather than reactive level. That's the key here. And we've been at the table for 14 years, working with the state and many other governments around the world. But this is our focus. California, this is our home. We feed a lot of the world, as we know. We have the best technology leaders on the planet. So, and we've got business that literally needs to expand and grow in California. And I think the beauty of what Cal OES under the director Gallarducci, and as well as the governor, the beauty is that they're making that leap forward to have all of us work together the best we can. But in that earthquake, we'd installed systems at the fire station 12 and a half years ago. This wasn't overnight. This wasn't a maybe. This has been vetted, validated, every occurrence. I went to the Seismic Safety Commission, and met with Assemblywoman Alquist, actually at that time, and her chief of technology, Mr. Jacobs. That was way back then because I wanted somebody from the state government to watch what we were doing and validate it, not us saying it. And I want to also stress something that's very important, what happened with this earthquake. And that's that these individuals, the end users, told us what they needed, not us telling them. We've learned, and this is 20 years of my life dedicated to this, because I believe in it more than anything I have ever done. And so that earthquake, within maybe 3 seconds at the most, every fire station door that we put in 12 years ago was opened. An audible alert went out. The ringtone went out. The lights turned on. Anything they wanted, they got. And those systems worked perfectly as designed. Every single fire station before the power went out. Now that's an example of a system that works in an earthquake. If that wasn't 3:45 a.m., there would be a lot more dead people and children. We have dodged a bullet over and over again in California because these earthquakes have happened, ironically, at times where children weren't in school. And we've had our system in schools, and we're protecting the future of America that way. And seismic warning systems, no matter what the academic groups or anybody else says or does, is here to stay. We're going to join in. We're going to make a difference. And we're going to stay at this no matter what it takes. And you've got my commitment and my word on that. And I appreciate everything that you can do to support that and that we can work together under this leadership.